Ethan Cole sat alone in his small apartment, staring at the television screen as the news anchor spoke in hushed, urgent tones. The room was dimly lit, the only sound coming from the soft hum of the air conditioner and the occasional rustle of papers on his cluttered desk. On the screen, a live feed showed an image that seemed almost surreal, a massive fleet of alien ships hovering ominously near Jupiter. Their sleek, metallic forms glinted under the sunlight, each vessel larger than any city on Earth. The invaders had identified themselves as the Krylos Dominion, a name that sent chills down Ethan's spine. A deep, guttural voice filled the broadcast, translated into dozens of languages for the world to hear. "We are the Krylos Dominion," it declared. "Your planet is now under our control. Surrender unconditionally within 72 hours, or face annihilation." Ethan leaned forward, his brow furrowed. He wasn't sure what bothered him more, the sheer audacity of the message, or the calm certainty behind it. The Krylos didn't sound like they were negotiating. They sounded like conquerors who already believed they had won, and perhaps they had reason to feel that way. Humanity had never encountered an alien species before, let alone one with technology so advanced. To most people, Earth must have seemed defenseless. But Ethan knew better, or at least he suspected there was more to the story. As a former military strategist turned astrophysicist, he had spent years studying patterns in space exploration and classified government projects. There were whispers, rumors of secret programs buried deep underground, hidden away from public view. Programs designed not just to explore the stars, but to protect Earth from threats exactly like this. His phone buzzed on the table, snapping him out of his thoughts. It was Rachel Meyer, his childhood friend and now a high-ranking officer in the United Nations Defense Force, UNDF. Her face appeared on the screen, her expression tense but determined. "Ethan, we need to talk," she said without preamble. "Can you meet me at HQ? This is bigger than we thought." Ethan didn't hesitate. He grabbed his jacket and headed out into the night. The streets were eerily quiet, the usual bustle replaced by an atmosphere of dread. People stood in clusters outside bars and cafes, their eyes glued to screens showing the same looping footage of the alien fleet. Some cried openly, others argued about what should be done. But most simply looked lost, unsure how to react to something so unimaginable. When Ethan arrived at the UNDF headquarters, Rachel was waiting for him in a secure briefing room. Papers and digital tablets lay scattered across the table, along with holographic projections of the alien ships. "Look at this," she said, pointing to one of the displays. "They're not even trying to hide. They position themselves perfectly to block any escape routes if things go south." "What do you think they want?" Ethan asked, though he already had a suspicion. "Resources, territory, domination. It doesn't matter right now," Rachel replied sharply. "What matters is that we're sitting ducks unless we figure out a plan fast." Ethan nodded slowly, his mind racing. He glanced at the documents spread out before them, noticing something odd. One file caught his eye, a reference to something called Project Eclipse. It was heavily redacted, but the few visible lines hinted at something extraordinary, something Earth had kept hidden for decades. "They underestimated us," Ethan murmured, half to himself. "They think we're powerless because we've never shown them otherwise." Rachel looked at him sharply. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying," Ethan paused, choosing his words carefully. "I'm saying we might have a chance after all, but we'll need to dig deeper and act fast." As the two friends exchanged grim looks, the weight of the situation settled over them. The clock was ticking, and the fate of humanity hung precariously in the balance. Rachel tapped her fingers nervously on the table as she and Ethan pored over the classified files. The room was quiet except for the faint hum of the overhead lights and the occasional rustle of papers. Outside, the world was in chaos. News outlets were flooded with panic. Social media buzzed with fear, and protests erupted in cities across the globe. But inside this secure briefing room, it felt like time had slowed down. Every second mattered. Ethan flipped through the documents, his eyes scanning line after line of technical jargon and redacted text. Most of it was meaningless to anyone who didn't know what to look for, but certain phrases stood out to him. Reverse-engineered technology, cryogenic storage, and fleet activation protocols. Each word made his pulse quicken. Project Eclipse wasn't just some theoretical defense plan. It was real. And if he was right, it might be Earth's only hope. "We need to find where this project is based," Rachel said finally, breaking the silence. Her voice was steady, though her hands betrayed her anxiety. "If these ships exist, we don't have much time to get them online." Ethan nodded. Agreed. But whoever set this up didn't want it found easily. Look at all these blacked-out sections. They'd gone to great lengths to keep it hidden. Rachel frowned, leaning back in her chair. "Hidden from us, or from the aliens?" "Both, probably," Ethan replied. He pointed to a map embedded in one of the files. It showed coordinates near the Arctic Circle, marked with a series of symbols that resembled star charts. "This has to be it. Whatever Project Eclipse is, it's buried under the ice." Without wasting another moment, Rachel picked up her phone and called her superiors. Within minutes, a team was assembled, complete with engineers, scientists, and military personnel. Ethan insisted on joining them, despite Rachel's initial protests. "You're not trained for fieldwork," she argued, but Ethan wouldn't back down. "I've been studying this kind of tech for years," he countered. "If there's anyone who can make sense of what we find, it's me." The journey to the Arctic was grueling. The team traveled by air, then switched to snowmobiles as they approached the remote location. The biting cold cut through their heavy jackets, and the endless expanse of white seemed almost alien itself. When they finally reached the site, Ethan felt a shiver run down his spine, not from the cold, but from what lay beneath their feet. A massive steel door emerged from the snow, partially covered by layers of frost. It was unmarked, blending seamlessly into the icy landscape as if nature itself had tried to conceal it. A keypad and biometric scanner were embedded into the surface, requiring multiple layers of authentication before granting access. Rachel entered the code she'd been given, her breath visible in the freezing air as she worked. When the door hissed open, revealing a long, descending corridor lit by harsh fluorescent lights, the group exchanged uneasy glances. The air smelled stale, as though no one had been here in decades. As they ventured deeper, the walls became lined with monitors displaying rows of data, many of which flickered erratically. At the heart of the facility, they found what they had come for, a vast chamber filled with row upon row of sleek, dormant warships. Each ship was unlike anything Ethan had ever seen. Their designs were otherworldly yet familiar, as if someone had taken pieces of alien technology and rebuilt them to suit human needs. Weapon systems bristled along their hulls, and glowing panels pulsed faintly, as though waiting to be awakened. In the center of the room stood a control station, its interface humming softly. This changes everything," Rachel whispered, her voice trembling with awe. She turned to Ethan. "Can you figure out how to activate them?" Ethan stepped forward, his mind racing. He ran his fingers over the console, examining the controls. After a few tense moments, he nodded. "I think so. But it's going to take time, and we don't have much of that left." As the team got to work, Rachel couldn't shake the feeling that they were walking into uncharted territory. These ships were humanity's best chance against the Krylos, but they also raised unsettling questions. Who had built them? Why had they been kept secret? And most importantly, would they be enough to turn the tide? Outside, the clock continued to tick. 72 hours had seemed like an eternity when the ultimatum first arrived. Now, it felt terrifyingly short. The team worked tirelessly in the cavernous chamber, their movements hurried but precise. The air was thick with tension, the weight of their task pressing down on each of them. Ethan stood at the central console, his fingers flying over the controls as he tried to decipher the activation sequence for the dormant warships. Rachel paced nearby, her eyes darting between the ships and the countdown timer displayed on a nearby monitor. 48 hours remained until the Krylos deadline. It's not just about turning them on, Ethan muttered, more to himself than anyone else. These systems are designed to integrate with human pilots. We'll need people who can handle this kind of tech, or at least learn quickly. Rachel nodded, already thinking ahead. I'll contact UNDF Command. They can start pulling together volunteers from the military and space programs. But we'll need someone to lead the effort. Someone who knows how to train pilots under pressure. Before Ethan could respond, a voice called out from across the room. You're looking at him. It was Commander Liam Carter, a tall man in his late 30s with sharp features and an air of quiet confidence. He had arrived with the support team, though no one had expected him to step into such a critical role. I've flown everything Earth has ever built, Liam continued, striding toward them. If these ships are half as advanced as they look, I can figure them out and teach others to do the same. Ethan raised an eyebrow but didn't argue. Time was too precious to waste on doubts. Instead, he focused on the console, typing commands and running diagnostics. Slowly but surely, the first ship began to hum with life. Its sleek surface shimmered as power coursed through its systems, and the glowing panels along its hull brightened. A cheer erupted from the team, though it was short-lived. One ship was operational, but thousands more remained dark. As the hours passed, progress became steadier. More ships came online, their engines roaring to life in a symphony of mechanical power. Engineers scurried between vessels, checking systems, and making adjustments. Pilots selected by Rachel's team began arriving, their faces pale with exhaustion, but determined nonetheless. Among them was Emma Dawson, a young woman with a reputation for quick thinking under pressure. She approached Ethan cautiously, her helmet tucked under one arm. "What exactly are we dealing with here?" she asked, glancing at the nearest ship. "This thing looks like it belongs in a sci-fi movie." Ethan managed a faint smile. "In a way, it does. These ships were reverse-engineered from alien tech. Faster, stronger, deadlier than anything we've ever built. But that means they're also unpredictable. You'll need to trust your instincts and be ready for anything." Emma nodded, swallowing hard. She wasn't the only one feeling out of her depth. Across the chamber, Alex Rivera, another pilot, sat in the cockpit of a newly activated ship, gripping the controls tightly. Sweat dripped down his forehead as he ran through a series of test maneuvers. The ship responded smoothly, almost intuitively, but the sheer speed and precision left him dizzy. Back at the control station, Ethan paused to rub his temples. His mind raced with calculations and possibilities, but exhaustion was starting to creep in. Rachel noticed and placed a hand on his shoulder. "You should rest," she said firmly. "We can't afford mistakes, and you won't be any good to us if you collapse." "I'll rest when this is over," Ethan replied, shaking his head. "Besides, there's still too much to do. We need to make sure every ship is combat-ready before." His words were cut off by a sudden alarm blaring through the chamber. Everyone froze, their eyes darting toward the monitors. A small scout ship from the Krylos fleet had broken formation and was heading directly toward Earth. It wasn't part of the main armada. It was moving alone, fast, and with clear intent. "They're testing us," Rachel said grimly, "seeing how we'll react." Ethan clenched his fists. "Then let's give them something to think about." The team sprang into action, coordinating with ground forces to intercept the scout. For the first time since the invasion began, humanity had a chance to fight back, not just to survive, but to prove that Earth was far from defenseless. The scout ship descended into Earth's atmosphere like a streak of fire, its sleek form cutting through the clouds with terrifying speed. It landed in a barren stretch of desert, kicking up dust and debris as it touched down. The Krylos vessel was smaller than the massive warships orbiting near Jupiter, but its presence was no less menacing. Its surface shimmered with an unnatural metallic sheen, and strange symbols glowed faintly along its hull. Within minutes, UNDF forces arrived on the scene, their vehicles kicking up trails of sand as they surrounded the alien craft. Soldiers took positions behind armored trucks, their weapons trained on the ship. Tension crackled in the air as everyone waited to see what would happen next. Then, with a hiss, the ship's hatch opened. A group of Krylos emerged, their towering forms clad in sleek armor that seemed to shift and shimmer like liquid metal. Their faces were hidden behind opaque visors, making them look more machine than living beings. They moved with deliberate slowness, scanning the area with glowing devices attached to their wrists. It was clear they weren't expecting resistance, or at least, not anything significant. Rachel watched the scene unfold from a command vehicle a safe distance away. She clenched her fists tightly, her knuckles white. "This is it," she said into her comms unit. "Engage on my mark." Ethan sat beside her, monitoring the situation on a portable screen. His heart pounded as he saw the Krylos begin to deploy drones, small, insect-like machines that buzzed around the area, likely gathering data. If those drones reported back to the main fleet, the Krylos might discover Earth's secret preparations. That couldn't be allowed to happen. Now, Rachel barked. The order echoed across the battlefield. UNDF soldiers opened fire, their bullets sparking harmlessly against the Krylos' energy shields. But the aliens weren't completely invincible. One of the drones exploded midair, sending shards of metal scattering. The Krylos turned toward the source of the attack, raising weapons that emitted pulses of blinding light. The skirmish erupted into chaos. Emma Dawson and Alex Rivera were among the reinforcements called in to assist. Flying experimental fighter jets equipped with prototype weapons, they dove toward the alien ship, firing missiles designed to penetrate energy barriers. The first shot missed, but the second struck true, tearing a hole in the ship's side. Smoke poured out, and the Krylos scrambled to retreat. Liam Carter led a ground assault team, moving closer to the damaged vessel. He shouted orders over the roar of explosions, keeping his squad focused despite the overwhelming odds. When one soldier faltered under enemy fire, Liam pulled him back to safety without hesitation. His calm demeanor inspired those around him, even as the battle raged on. Back at the command vehicle, Ethan analyzed the footage streaming in from drones and cameras. Something about the Krylos movements caught his attention. They weren't adapting quickly enough. For all their advanced technology, they seemed confused, almost disoriented. "They're arrogant," Ethan muttered. "They don't expect us to fight back this hard." Rachel glanced at him sharply. "You think they underestimated us?" "I know they did," Ethan replied. "And we can use that against them." As the firefight continued, the tide began to turn. The Krylos drones were destroyed, and their forces were pushed back toward their ship. Just as the last alien boarded, the scout vessel lifted off the ground, its engines roaring as it prepared to escape. But before it could ascend too high, a well-placed missile from Emma's jet struck its underside, crippling it. The ship crashed back to the desert floor, engulfed in flames. When the smoke cleared, the UNDF team moved in cautiously. The Krylos were gone, either killed in the explosion or vaporized by their own self-destruct mechanisms. But they had left something behind, a piece of wreckage containing vital data. Scientists rushed to retrieve it, knowing it could hold the key to understanding the invaders' weaknesses. As Rachel and Ethan reviewed the recovered information, a grim satisfaction settled over them. The Krylos had made a mistake underestimating humanity. And now, for the first time since the invasion began, hope flickered to life. The victory in the desert was a small one, but it sent ripples through the world. News of the successful defense against the Krylos scout spread quickly, igniting a mix of relief and cautious optimism among the public. For the first time since the alien fleet appeared, humanity dared to believe that maybe, just maybe, they could fight back. But within the walls of the UNDF headquarters, tension simmered. Rachel stood at the front of a crowded briefing room, her hands resting on the podium, as she addressed a group of military leaders, scientists, and politicians. The air was thick with conflicting opinions. Some argued that Earth should reveal its hidden fleet immediately, using the element of surprise to intimidate the Krylos into retreating. Others feared retaliation, insisting that showing their hand too soon could provoke an even larger attack. "We can't afford to sit here and argue," Rachel said sharply, cutting through the noise. "Every second we waste debating is a second closer to their deadline. If we want to survive, we need to act, and act decisively." Her words struck a chord with Senator Daniel Harper, a gruff man in his 50s whose face bore the lines of years spent navigating political storms. He rose from his seat, his voice carrying authority. "I agree with Commander Meyer. We've kept this fleet hidden for decades, waiting for a moment like this. Now's not the time to hesitate. Humanity needs to see that we're ready to stand our ground." Not everyone shared his confidence. Agent Chloe Bennett, a government watchdog tasked with monitoring classified programs, leaned forward in her chair, her sharp eyes fixed on Rachel. "And what happens when this fleet isn't enough?" she asked pointedly. "You're asking us to stake everything on ships we barely understand. What if they fail? What if the Krylos adapt faster than we expect?" Ethan, seated near the back of the room, listened intently. He knew Chloe had a point. There were risks and plenty of unknowns, but he also knew they didn't have a choice. Keeping the fleet hidden would only delay the inevitable. "It's not about being certain," he interjected, standing up. "It's about giving people hope. If we show the Krylos that Earth isn't defenseless, it might buy us the time we need to turn this around." His words seemed to sway some of the skeptics, but not all. A heated debate followed, voices rising as factions clashed. It wasn't until Daniel Harper spoke again that the room began to quiet. "My son serves aboard one of those ships," he said, his voice steady but tinged with emotion. "He signed up because he believed in protecting this planet. Are we really going to tell him, and everyone else risking their lives, that we're too scared to fight?" The silence that followed was heavy, broken only by the faint hum of the overhead lights. One by one, the leaders nodded their agreement. Rachel exhaled slowly, feeling the weight of responsibility settle over her shoulders. They had made their decision. Now came the hard part, executing it. Later that evening, Rachel met Ethan in a quieter corner of the facility. She looked exhausted, her usual composure replaced by a rare vulnerability. "Do you think we're doing the right thing?" she asked softly, leaning against the wall. Ethan hesitated before answering. "I don't know," he admitted, "but I do know that sitting back and waiting for the Krylos to make the next move won't save us. Sometimes you have to take a leap of faith, even if you're not sure where you'll land." Rachel nodded, though doubt still lingered in her eyes. As they walked back toward the main chamber, the sound of engines echoed through the halls. Pilots and crew members bustled about, preparing for what lay ahead. Among them was Emma Dawson, who caught sight of Rachel and gave her a determined smile. "Whatever happens," Emma said, "we'll be ready." For the first time in days, Rachel allowed herself to believe it. The hours leading up to the launch felt both endless and fleeting. In the vast chamber beneath the Arctic ice, activity buzzed with an electric intensity. Pilots scrambled to familiarize themselves with their ships, engineers made last-minute adjustments, and technicians ran system checks on every vessel. The air was filled with the hum of machinery, the clatter of tools, and the murmur of voices exchanging instructions. Despite the organized chaos, there was an undercurrent of fear of failure, fear of the unknown, and fear of what awaited them beyond Earth's atmosphere. Ethan stood near the central console, his eyes scanning the rows of glowing warships. Each one represented hope, but also sacrifice. He knew not all of them would return. Some of the pilots were veterans, others rookies who had never faced combat before. Emma Dawson walked past him, her helmet tucked under one arm and a determined look in her eyes. She paused briefly when she noticed him watching. "You think we're ready?" she asked, her voice steady despite the weight of the question. "As ready as we'll ever be," Ethan replied, forcing a small smile. "Just remember what I told you. Trust your instincts. These ships are designed to work with you, not against you." Emma nodded, though her knuckles tightened around her helmet. She turned and headed toward her assigned ship, climbing into the cockpit with practiced movements. Nearby, Alex Rivera adjusted his controls, muttering to himself as he ran through pre-flight protocols. His hands trembled slightly, but his focus never wavered. Rachel moved among the teams, offering words of encouragement and ensuring everyone was prepared. She stopped beside Liam Carter, who stood near the flagship Odyssey. He was briefing his squadron leaders, his tone calm but firm. When he noticed Rachel approaching, he gave her a curt nod. "We're set," he said. "All squads report ready for launch." "Good," Rachel replied, though her expression remained tense. "Remember, this isn't just about winning. It's about showing the Krylos that Earth won't back down. Every move matters." As the countdown began, the chamber fell silent except for the automated voice announcing the seconds. Ethan joined Rachel and Liam aboard the Odyssey, taking his place at a secondary console. The bridge was crowded with crew members, each focused on their tasks. Outside the viewport, the first wave of ships began to ascend, their engines lighting up the icy cavern like a constellation of stars. Back on Earth, millions watched live broadcasts of the fleet launching into space. Families gathered around screens, holding their breath as the ships disappeared into the night sky. For many, it was a surreal moment, seeing humanity rise to meet an alien threat head-on, armed with technology they hadn't even known existed. Protesters who had once demanded transparency now cheered, their anger replaced by pride and determination. In orbit, the human fleet assembled into formation, waiting for the signal to engage. Through the viewports, the massive shapes of the Krylos Armada loomed ominously in the distance. Their ships dwarfed anything humanity had ever built, their sheer size a reminder of how outmatched Earth seemed on paper. But the sight only fueled the resolve of those aboard the fleet. They weren't fighting for superiority, they were fighting for survival. Liam addressed the entire fleet over the comms channel, his voice clear and commanding. "This is it," he said. "Today, we show the universe that Earth isn't defenseless. Stick to your formations, follow orders, and trust each other. We've trained for this. Now let's make history." As the fleet surged forward, engines blazing, Ethan gripped the edge of his console tightly. He could feel the vibrations of the ship beneath his feet, hear the faint hum of energy coursing through its systems. For the first time, he allowed himself to believe they might actually stand a chance. But deep down, he knew the real test was yet to come. The battle ahead would be brutal, and not everyone would make it home. Still, as the Odyssey led the charge toward the Krylos fleet, Ethan couldn't help but feel a spark of pride. Humanity had been pushed to the brink, but it hadn't broken. Instead, it had risen, to fight, to survive, and to prove that Earth was worth defending. The human fleet surged forward, engines blazing as they approached the Krylos Armada. The enemy ships loomed larger with every passing second, their massive forms blocking out the stars behind them. Ethan sat at his console aboard the Odyssey, his fingers flying over the controls as he monitored the fleet's status. Tension crackled through the air, and the bridge crew exchanged nervous glances. This was it, the moment they had been preparing for. Liam Carter stood near the front of the bridge, his eyes fixed on the viewport. "All squadrons, hold formation," he ordered through the comms channel. His voice was calm but firm, cutting through the static of hundreds of pilots responding to his commands. The human ships spread out in a wide arc, their glowing hulls creating a dazzling display against the blackness of space. For a brief moment, there was silence. No movement from the Krylos fleet, no sign of retaliation. Then, without warning, the Krylos opened fire. Bright beams of energy shot across the void, striking several human ships. Alarms blared as shields flared under the impact, some holding steady, while others flickered dangerously close to failure. Rachel gripped the railing beside Ethan, her knuckles white. "They're testing us," she said tightly, "seeing how we'll react." Ethan nodded, his mind racing. We can't let them dictate the fight. We need to take the initiative. Liam didn't hesitate. Execute Maneuver Delta 7, he commanded. Hit them hard and fast. The human ships broke formation, splitting into smaller groups that darted toward the Krylos fleet like swarms of insects. Their speed and agility caught the invaders off guard. Plasma cannons roared to life, firing bursts of energy that tore through the Krylos shields. Explosions lit up the battlefield as several enemy ships were crippled or destroyed. Cheers erupted across the comms channels, but Liam's voice cut through the noise. Stay focused. This isn't over yet. Despite the initial success, the Krylos quickly adapted. Their ships began to move in coordinated patterns, forming a defensive wall that made it harder for the humans to strike effectively. Waves of drones poured out from their carriers, targeting the smaller human vessels. Pilots scrambled to evade, their ships weaving through a storm of enemy fire. Emma Dawson gritted her teeth as her ship shuddered under repeated hits. Her shields were down to 15%, and alarms screamed in her ears. She spotted an opening, a gap in the Krylos defenses, and dove straight for it, firing everything she had. Her shots connected, disabling one of the enemy drones and clearing a path for Alex Rivera to follow. Thanks, Alex called over the comms, his voice strained but grateful. Back aboard the Odyssey *, Ethan worked furiously to analyze the battle data streaming in. Something about the Krylos movements bothered him. They weren't just reacting, they were learning. Each time the humans adjusted their tactics, the Krylos countered faster than before. It was as if they were anticipating every move. They're reading our strategies, Ethan muttered, turning to Rachel. We need to change things up, or we're going to lose. Rachel nodded grimly. What do you suggest? Before Ethan could answer, Liam spoke up. Send the decoys, he said. Draw part of their fleet away from the main group. We'll hit them where it hurts. Ethan immediately understood the plan. Using cloaked probes and fake signals, they lured a large portion of the Krylos fleet toward Saturn's rings. Hidden among the icy debris were dozens of Earth's warships, waiting silently. When the Krylos entered the trap, the ambush was devastating. Plasma torpedoes erupted from the shadows, tearing through the unsuspecting ships. Chaos rippled through the Krylos ranks. For the first time since the invasion began, the tide of the battle shifted. The Krylos commander, Varnuk, realized too late that humanity wasn't the weakling species he had assumed. His arrogance had blinded him. And now, it might cost him the war. The ambush near Saturn's rings was a turning point, but it came at a cost. The human fleet had dealt a heavy blow to the Krylos, destroying dozens of ships and scattering their forces. Yet the victory was far from clean. Many of Earth's ships lay crippled or adrift in space, their crews either dead or stranded. The Odyssey sustained damage as well, its hull scorched, and one engine sputtering dangerously. Despite this, the mood aboard the flagship was tense but resolute. Every survivor knew the fight was far from over. Liam Carter stood near the viewport, his jaw clenched as he watched the remnants of the Krylos fleet regroup. Their movements were slower now, more cautious, betraying a newfound respect for humanity's capabilities. But Liam wasn't fooled. The Krylos still outnumbered them, and their main armada remained intact. We hit them hard, he said, addressing the bridge crew. But they're not done yet. They'll come back stronger, and we need to be ready. Ethan worked frantically at his console, analyzing data from the battle. His eyes darted across the screens as he processed the losses and recalculated their odds. It wasn't good. The human fleet had lost nearly a third of its ships in the ambush, and many of the remaining vessels were running low on fuel and ammunition. Worse still, the Krylos seemed to be adapting faster than expected. Their tactics were evolving, countering every move humanity made. Rachel approached him, her face pale with exhaustion. How bad is it? She asked quietly, leaning over his shoulder. Bad enough, Ethan replied, his voice tight. If we keep fighting like this, We'll run ourselves into the ground before they even break through our lines. Rachel nodded grimly. She turned to Liam. We can't keep trading blows. We need something bigger, something that forces them to retreat. Liam thought for a moment, then glanced at Ethan. What about targeting their command structure? If we take out their leader, their whole operation might collapse. Ethan hesitated, his mind racing. He pulled up a schematic of the Krylos fleet, highlighting Varnak's massive flagship at the center. It's risky, he admitted. Their ship is heavily shielded, and it's surrounded by escorts. Getting close won't be easy. But it's possible, Rachel pressed. Isn't it? Ethan sighed, weighing the options. Finally, he nodded. If we use a concentrated strike team, maybe. But someone will have to lead it. And it won't be a suicide mission, exactly, but it'll be close. Liam stepped forward without hesitation. I'll do it. No, Rachel snapped, shaking her head. You're needed here. Someone else has to go. Before anyone could argue further, Emma Dawson's voice crackled over the comms channel. Commander, I volunteer. Her tone was firm, leaving no room for debate. Rachel frowned. Dawson, you've already been through enough. And I'm still alive, Emma interrupted. My ship's fast, and I know how to slip past their defenses. Let me do this. After a long pause, Liam gave a reluctant nod. All right, but you're not going alone. Rivera, you're with her. On the other end of the line, Alex Rivera acknowledged the order, though his voice betrayed his unease. Understood, sir. As Emma and Alex prepared for the mission, the rest of the fleet launched a diversionary attack, drawing the Krylos' attention away from their true objective. Explosions lit up the battlefield once again, masking the two small ships as they slipped through the chaos. Their goal was simple: infiltrate Varnak's flagship and disable its command hub. Inside the enemy vessel, alarms blared as intruder alerts flashed across the Krylos monitors. Emma and Alex fought their way through waves of drones and automated defenses, their ships weaving through narrow corridors filled with pulsating energy conduits. Every second felt like an eternity, their hearts pounding as they closed in on the target. Finally, they reached the command hub, a massive chamber filled with glowing panels and alien machinery. Emma locked onto the central core, firing a barrage of missiles that tore through the shielding. The room erupted in flames, and the entire ship shuddered violently. Back aboard the Odyssey *, Ethan watched the readings spike as Varnak's flagship faltered. It worked, he whispered, relief washing over him. But his joy was short-lived. A sudden explosion rocked the Odyssey *, throwing everyone off balance. Liam steadied himself against the railing, shouting orders as the crew scrambled to respond. The battle wasn't over yet. The explosion that rocked the Odyssey * sent shockwaves through the ship, throwing crew members to the floor and sending sparks flying from overloaded consoles. Ethan clung to his seat, his heart racing as alarms blared and warning lights flashed across the bridge. Smoke began to fill the air, acrid and choking. Damage report, Liam shouted, his voice cutting through the chaos. Portside engine is down, and we've got multiple hull breaches on decks 3 and 4, a technician called back, her hands flying over her controls. Shields are holding, for now. Rachel grabbed the railing beside Ethan, her face pale but determined. We can't afford to lose this ship, she said sharply. It's the flagship. If it goes down, morale will collapse. Liam nodded grimly. Divert all available power to the shields and get those breaches sealed. And someone tell me what hit us. Ethan scanned the data streaming in from external sensors. His stomach sank as he realized the truth. It's Varnak's flagship, he said, his voice tight. They're not done yet. Even with their command hub disabled, they're still operational, and they're targeting us directly. On the viewport, the massive Krylos vessel loomed closer, its weapon systems glowing ominously. Despite the crippling blow dealt by Emma and Alex, the ship remained a formidable opponent. Its escorts swarmed around it, firing volleys of energy beams that lit up the darkness of space. The human fleet scrambled to defend the Odyssey *, but they were stretched thin, their numbers dwindling with every passing second. Emma's voice crackled over the comms channel, strained but resolute. "Commander, we've done what we could, but their escorts are locking onto your position. We're trying to draw them off, but—" "Negative," Liam interrupted. "Fall back to the fleet. You've done enough. Let us handle this." Emma hesitated, then acknowledged the order. Her ship peeled away from the battle, joining Alex as they retreated toward the safety of the human lines. But even with reinforcements arriving, the situation aboard the Odyssey * grew more dire by the moment. Another blast shook the ship, and the lights flickered before stabilizing. "We're running out of time," Rachel muttered, gripping the railing tighter. "If we don't do something soon, we're finished." Ethan's mind raced. He stared at the schematics of Varnok's flagship displayed on his console, searching for any weakness they could exploit. Then he saw it, a faint fluctuation in the enemy ship's energy signature. It was subtle, almost imperceptible, but it suggested something critical. The core systems were destabilized. If they could hit it with enough force, they might be able to finish the job Emma started. "Liam," Ethan said urgently, pointing to the screen. "Their core is damaged. If we focus all our firepower on that spot, we might be able to destroy it completely." Liam studied the data for a split second, then made his decision. "All ships, concentrate fire on Varnok's flagship. Coordinates 327 by 189. Hit it hard and fast." Now, the human fleet responded immediately, launching a relentless barrage of plasma torpedoes and energy beams at the designated target. The Krylos escorts tried to intercept the attack, but their efforts were too little, too late. Wave after wave of projectiles slammed into Varnok's flagship, each impact causing visible damage to its already weakened structure. Inside the bridge of the Odyssey *, the crew held their breath as they watched the enemy ship tremble under the assault. For a moment, it seemed like the plan might fail. The Krylos vessel continued to fire back, its weapons tearing through the human fleet with devastating precision. But then, with a blinding flash, the flagship's core exploded, sending a shockwave rippling through space. The resulting blast engulfed several nearby Krylos ships, obliterating them instantly. The rest of the armada faltered, their formations breaking apart as confusion spread through their ranks. Without Varnok's leadership, the invaders began to retreat, pulling back toward Jupiter and beyond. On the Odyssey *, cheers erupted as the crew realized they had won. Liam allowed himself a brief smile before turning to assess the damage. "Casualty reports?" he asked, his tone softening. "High," came the reply. "But we're still here, and so is Earth." As the surviving ships regrouped, Ethan leaned back in his chair, exhaustion overtaking him. They had done the impossible. They had fought back against an overwhelming force and emerged victorious. But the cost had been immense, and the scars would linger for years to come. Rachel placed a hand on his shoulder. "We did it," she said quietly. "Against all odds, we did it." Ethan nodded, though his thoughts were heavy. The battle was over, but the war for humanity's future was just beginning. The aftermath of the battle was both a time of celebration and mourning. The skies above Earth were quiet once more, but the scars of war lingered everywhere. Cities bore the marks of panic and unrest. Families grieved for loved ones lost in the fight, and hospitals overflowed with wounded soldiers. Yet, amidst the sorrow, there was also pride, a shared sense that humanity had faced its greatest challenge and refused to back down. Ethan stood on the observation deck of the Odyssey *, staring out at the stars. The ship's repairs were underway, though it would take months before it was fully operational again. He felt a mix of emotions, relief that they had survived, guilt over those who hadn't, and an uneasy awareness of how close they had come to total defeat. Rachel joined him after a while, her footsteps soft against the metal floor. She leaned against the railing beside him, her gaze fixed on the distant horizon. "What happens now?" she asked quietly, breaking the silence. Ethan sighed, rubbing his temples. "We rebuild. We learn from this. And we prepare for whatever comes next." Rachel nodded slowly. "It's not going to be easy. People are scared, angry. Some will want answers about Project Eclipse, about why we kept these ships hidden for so long. And some won't trust us anymore," Ethan added. "Secrecy has a price, and we're about to pay it." They stood in silence for a moment, each lost in their thoughts. Below them, Earth spun peacefully, oblivious to the turmoil still unfolding among its people. Despite everything, the planet looked beautiful, a fragile blue gem floating in the vastness of space. In the days that followed, the world began to pick up the pieces. Governments held emergency sessions to address the fallout from the invasion. Senator Daniel Harper emerged as a vocal advocate for transparency, urging leaders to share what they knew about Project Eclipse and other classified programs. "We can't face threats like this alone," he argued during a televised address. "If we're going to survive, we need unity, not secrets." Agent Chloe Bennett took up the cause as well, launching investigations into the origins of Project Eclipse and the decisions that had led to its creation. Her work uncovered troubling truths. Decades of covert operations, experiments conducted without public consent, and alliances forged with alien species long before the Krylos arrived. It was a complicated legacy, one that raised as many questions as it answered. Meanwhile, Rachel stepped down from her position in the UNDF, citing the need for fresh leadership. She returned to her hometown, where she focused on rebuilding efforts and supporting families affected by the war. Though she missed the camaraderie of the fleet, she found solace in knowing she had played a part in saving humanity. For Ethan, life became a balance between reflection and action. He poured his energy into studying the recovered Krylos technology, determined to ensure Earth would never be caught off guard again. His research led to breakthroughs in energy systems and defense networks, innovations that promised to safeguard the planet for generations to come. As weeks turned into months, the memory of the battle faded, but not entirely. Memorials were erected in cities around the world, honoring those who had given their lives to protect Earth. Pilots like Liam Carter, whose sacrifice had inspired countless others, were remembered as heroes. Even Emma Dawson and Alex Rivera, whose daring mission had crippled the Krylos flagship, became symbols of hope. One evening, as Ethan sat alone in his apartment, he glanced at a photo on his desk. It showed him standing with Rachel and Liam shortly before the final battle, their faces tired but resolute. He smiled faintly, then turned his attention to the stars outside his window. Humanity had proven itself stronger than anyone thought possible, but the universe was vast, and dangers undoubtedly lurked beyond the horizon. Still, Ethan felt a quiet confidence. Earth had faced its first test among the stars, and passed. Whatever challenges lay ahead, humanity would meet them together. After all, they had already shown the cosmos something remarkable. Even when outnumbered and outmatched, they could rise to defend their home.